The auto workers have launched a series of strikes after their union failed to reach an agreement with the US's three largest manufacturers over a new contract. Now, kicking off America's most ambitious industrial labor action in decades. But the deadline for talks between Ford, General Motors, Stellantis and the United Auto Workers expired at midnight on Thursday, with the sides still far apart on the union's new contract priorities. Now, the uproar marks the first time that all three of the Detroit car makers have been targeted by strikes at the same time. Now, the protesters affected production of the Ford Bronco, Jeep Wrangler and Chevrolet Colorado pickup truck, along with other popular models.
For the past 24 hours, we've been actively bargaining with Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis. For the first time in our union's history, we had all three companies bargaining right here at the Solidarity House, leading into the final hours of our strike deadline. We've been working hard, trying to reach a deal for economic and social justice for our members. We have been firm. We are committed to winning an agreement with the Big Three that reflects the incredible sacrifice and contributions UAW members have made to these companies.
Now, the American President Joe Biden spoke briefly on the ongoing strike.
But I respect workers' right to use their options under the collective bargaining system. And I understand the workers' frustration. Over generations, auto workers sacrificed so much to keep the industry alive and strong, especially through the economic crisis and the pandemic. Workers deserve a fair share of the benefits they helped create for an enterprise. I do appreciate that the parties have been working round the clock. And when I first called them at the very first day of their negotiations, I said, please stay at the table as long as you can to try to work this out. And they've been around the clock, and the companies have made some significant offers. But I believe they should go further to ensure record corporate profits mean record contracts for the UAW. Let me say that again. Record corporate profits, which they have, should be shared by record contracts for the UAW. And just as we're building an economy of the future, we need labor agreements for the future.
Now, the strikes involving a combined 12,700 workers will take place at assembly plants operated by Ford in Wayne, Michigan, General Motors in Wenzel, Missouri, and Stellantis' Jeep plant in Toledo, Ohio. Now, they are critical to the production of some of the Detroit Three's most profitable vehicles. It is being coordinated by UAW President Shawn Fain. He says that he intends to launch a series of limited and targeted stand-up strikes to shut individual auto plants around the United States.
It's a shame. It's a shame we've got to be out here right now doing this because the companies won't take care of their workers who they want to call family. But I feel damn good and I'm damn proud to stand here with the VP of the UAW over Ford, the top AA, and all of our workers out here. These guys are the ones. This is what it's all about.
And the message to your members out here tonight, what's the final message before you head
Record profits equal record contracts. It's our time, and all we want is our share of equity. We're not asking to be millionaires. We're not asking to join the billionaire class. We're asking for our fair share of the fruits of our labor.
Now, the UAW has an $825 million strike fund that is set to compensate workers $500 a week while out on strike and could support all of its members for nearly about 3 months. Staggering the strikes rather than having all 150,000 members walk out at once will allow the union to stretch those resources. And a long UAW strike threatens to spread economic turmoil as suppliers in other industries that depend on automakers and their workers see demand dry up. The standoff has in fact become a political issue with President Joe Biden, who's facing re-election next year, prominently calling for a deal. All right, now to give us more perspective in terms of why this strike is happening at this moment in the United States, we're being joined in by our correspondent Susan Tehrani, who's tracking these developments very closely. She's joining us live from New York. Now, Susan, this is almost in some ways unprecedented. Auto workers of these three big companies are on strike. Tell us what their demands are and why is it they've not been able to strike a deal with the management?
So the union says that the reason they weren't able to strike a deal was because they didn't, the automakers didn't bring a counter offer to them, which their offer initially was a 40% pay raise in the span of a few years, and also 4 work days a week. And so the automakers came back very late after negotiations fell apart and said that we're offering now a 20% raise to them, which is in par with the biggest and highest ranking executives of these companies. However, the reason that they're not really talking the same language is because these negotiations started very late, and unions are now somewhat dismayed that their demands weren't taken seriously earlier. And these automakers, the reason it's so unprecedented is because, first of all, they've never been on a strike, all of them all together. The last time, for example, Ford was on a strike was 1976. Can you imagine that? And this is really a huge hit to the economy with each day that passes by. But surprisingly, I will tell you, Mohammed, that it was interesting to see that stock prices for all three were, they opened pretty high today in a hope that perhaps some sort of negotiated settlement will be on the way very soon.
Absolutely, indeed. And also very quickly, Susan, how badly is this likely to affect the auto industry in the United States?
Well, not only the auto industry, but the economy as a whole. Really, these automakers, if they continue to strike, could cost just the auto industry alone somewhere around $5 million a day on the one hand. And then on the other hand, the economic aspects of it is one side. You can't not talk about the political turmoil that it has created, notably for the Biden administration, because on the one hand, it has to be very careful in supporting these unions. President Biden and President Trump both are very pro-union. These unions go out, they get votes. But on the other hand, they have to be very mindful because of the economy on how they talk about these big companies as well.
Absolutely indeed, Susan. Thank you very much indeed for joining us and giving us all those details there. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.